welcome to Dip In and Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. I am very fortunate this morning to be sitting down with what I can only describe as the wonderful Michelle John. Michelle is the founder of PEGS, and as I always do, I will hand over to Michelle to explain a bit more about what she does. Good morning.
Good morning, Lucy, and thank you so much for having me. Yep, my name is Michelle John. I'm the founding director of PEGS, which stands for Parental Education Growth Support. Bit of a mouthful, but PEGS, helping parents hold things together. Cheesy but effective, right? We provide support to parental figures across the UK who may be experiencing abusive behaviours from their child, whether their child is of minor age or adult age. This form of abuse is really taboo. We don't really speak about it. And so when PEGS started in March 2020, I decided to be the change that I wanted to see.
I love that. And you're right, it is something that I don't think I knew what it was until I discovered you. And I thought, oh, so it is actually this is right, so good. It is a thing. Well, not good, but good that it actually is being given a name, and it is something we can say it is real. And it is very similar in terms of, I think, when I talk about post-separation abuse, because again, it's people think, well, what is that? What do you mean? I didn't even know it existed. And I think as well, when we bring children into it and young people, it just makes it really hard for people to understand, doesn't it? So we need those conversations. We need it more and more now than ever, especially as social media and everything else kind of takes off, and children, anxiety and all the other things we have going on. And I think we were just talking about this before we started recording, is where does that kind of spill over, that sort of when we're used to a child maybe, and especially if there's been abuse in the household prior to maybe separation or something, or it may still be going on, where do we draw that distinction between a child maybe pushing the boundaries, which all kids do at some point, and what then becomes abusive behaviour? And I think that's where a lot of parents will probably struggle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think as a society, we need to get really comfortable sitting in uncomfortable spaces.
Yeah.
And I think child-to-parent abuse currently sits in that uncomfortable space because nobody ever wants to think about someone's child displaying those behaviours towards them. When we think about domestic abuse, primarily, we still think of, male abuse towards a partner or ex-partner. And we've come a long way since then, a long, long way. But child-to-parent abuse probably is back in the 60s, 70s, I would say, if that makes sense to what I mean, around all of this. And, I need to be really clear here. We don't use the term perpetrator at PEGS when we talk about a child, particularly at the age of 18. We don't think it's helpful. Parents don't necessarily like that language. And also, child-to-parent abuse, what we try to do as a service is look at it and not blame anyone, because sometimes it's the situation's a situation. So pointing blame doesn't help anybody in that situation. Let's try and work towards finding a solution. And parents that have come into us, they've been experiencing this quite often for a long period of time. And quite rightly, like you said, we're not talking about typical behaviours, the pushing of boundaries, the door slamming, my battery died on my phone, I didn't know what time it was. We're not talking about what we would see are behaviours that most of the majority of children will experience and go through during that period of growth and self-awareness and rule breaking, boundary breaking and all of that. I'm sure we've all been there at some point, myself included. It's true.
Yeah, I'm with you.
We're talking about the other end. We're talking about extreme behaviours that, create that environment when the parent, caregiver lives in fear of their child's reactions. They're starting to change their own behaviour because of the fear of what could happen if they say or do something, or they put an extra boundary in place. Perhaps the behaviours also spilled over towards siblings, pets in the home, or even the wider community. And so when parents come to us, we ask them, okay, how are you feeling? What's your experience? What is your outcome? And how can we help? Because one of the things for me, especially because we run this organisation, and I'm really clear, PEGS might be run by us, but it belongs to a community of incredible people. Yeah. Their voices will always be at the centre of everything that we do because it's paramount. And we also need to remember that we don't have to experience something ourselves directly in order to accept that it could be and probably is somebody's reality. And PEGS was created because of lived experience. That's in the public domain. Yeah. What isn't in the public domain are the private bits that go alongside that. Because for me, I don't need to bleed for anyone. I'm healed. my family and my family, and I will protect them to the end. But PEGS was bigger than me. It was just that I managed to find the strength to turn that pain to power. But when we talk about children, it is uncomfortable because, quite right, children need protecting.
Yeah.
We need safeguarding. We need to make sure that they're nurtured, that they've got boundaries, they've structure, their needs are all being met. None of those things are wrong. But where that behaviour transitions into abusive behaviour, that's where families need the support.
Yeah. Oh my God. You know what? Just need to have you up, like basically doing speeches 24/7 because everything, I'm just sitting there going tick, tick in my head. And you're right, just because somebody else, and that's so true, just because somebody else doesn't experience something doesn't make that other person's reality true. And that's so true of abuse in general, isn't it? And when it comes to children, I think the difficulty, I think, for society as a whole, and obviously the parents who are experiencing it with the children, because obviously it's all part of their experience. And yes, okay, the difficulty I think is people thinking that children could ever be anything other than, sweet and lovely. And what do they say? It's like, is it the age of 7 or something is the age of reason? So that's when they start to learn that sort of the difference between right and wrong, when they start to tell porcupines and all those kind of things. And I think it's hard for society to picture a child being like that, but or even somebody admitting to themselves, that, and you're right, making sure that it's like, well, what's your outcome? And I don't think I've ever heard anybody who's run an organization like you have say, yes, we do, but they're at the heart of it. And you're right, it's their voices, it's about their experiences. And do you find sometimes if there is like sort of peer support that people find, and I know I've noticed this within domestic abuse
Mm-hmm.
kind of group facilitation, is people will sort of turn and go, I'm on my own, I'm completely on my own in this. This has never happened to anybody but me. And that's not an egotistical thing. It's just believing that it couldn't, I can't understand how anyone could know
Domestic abuse, though, isn't it?
if,
Domestic abuse makes you feel as a victim,
yeah.
isolated and alone.
Yeah, exactly. And so that feeling for somebody going along, say, to PEGS and thinking it's just happening to me, it must just be me as a parent, I'm the failure, I'm the problem. And then actually finding, no, it's not, it does happen to other people. And the work being done, like you say now, through TV, that kind of thing, it's so important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We need to start having the conversations earlier, though, and we need to be starting breaking down the barriers. So if we think about parenting, society already blames us for our choices, how we give birth, how we choose to feed our baby.
That's
You
it.
know, perhaps our toddler has a tantrum. That's our fault as the parent.
Yeah.
You know, I have a toddler tantrum at 40 in
All
Tesco.
right.
Fred is ridiculous, Lucy.
Like perimenopause tantrum
You
now.
know, that's true, isn't it? You know, our child goes on to teenage years, they make different choices, unhealthy choices, perhaps. Again, parents' fault. They go into adulthood. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that there's no link because I 100% stand by it and accept that our experiences growing up can often impact our behaviour, our awareness, our understanding of things into adulthood 100%. But there is a line from accepting that and providing options for support because not everybody's at the right space to want to accept that support, or that support's not right for them.
Yeah.
Two, then using perhaps experience as an excuse to justify the behaviour. Because if we take all of the other bits out of it and we just talk about the behaviour, which is what you'll hear me talk about and my team, we always talk about the behaviour that's being displayed. If we talk about the behaviour is the behaviour. Do we get to choose what are abusive behaviours purely based on somebody's relationship to another person or age?
Never thought of it like that. That's, oh my God. Oh my God. See, this is, oh, yeah. You
And
bloody,
if you think about domestic abuse, as society, we've grown, you know, and we do accept now that children, and I use children for
yeah.
under 18, particularly for this, they will, sadly for some, they will go on to have intimate partner relationships, even in their teenage years.
Mhm,
We accept that that is domestic abuse.
mhm.
So why are we struggling to accept
Yeah.
child to parent abuse if that individual is choosing to behave that way towards their boyfriend, girlfriend, and then they're going home to mum, dad, grandma?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, I suppose in some ways, if there isn't any intervention or any support, it's the similarity between, well, that's their normal behavior. It becomes normalized. So when
Of
people
course.
say, well, why did you stay with that person? Why did you allow them to behave like that? Why? And we're always putting that onus back on the victims and the survivors all the time. And in this case, obviously the parents, we're putting that onus back on them. But actually, why aren't we asking the question about, okay, so this has happened, what we're going to do about it?
Yes.
How can we help? How can we support? Stop putting that blame and shame. As parents, they probably feel enough shame for everybody as it is. They probably feel that awful blame and shame, thinking that, well, if I'd have done this differently, could that have happened? And actually, if it's abusive behaviour, the chances are you couldn't have changed it, whatever you did, because that's the behaviour that's being displayed, like you say.
Yeah. And like parents often quite tell us they feel isolated, they feel alone, they feel blamed, guilt, shamed. Interestingly, they talk about secondary victimization from professionals,
Ah,
which we see all the time and hear all the time. That's not saying every professional, because we work with some incredible individuals
yeah,
out there, we really do. And yeah, it is important sometimes to understand what that family's experiences are. But sometimes all you can do is meet them where they're at
yeah, that's
and
so
go,
true.
actually, what do you need in this moment of time and what works for you?
Yeah, and
And
you know
what does that
what?
look like?
Yes, because when you just said that before as well about, and I come back to this a lot about timing. Timing's everything. So just because, say, as professionals or as people who are, like you say, secondary victimization from whoever it is, that person might not be ready to hear what's being said to them, and that's not their fault. And it
Yeah.
takes time, and you know yourself, it's sometimes someone could have support and it doesn't work for them then, but then 6 months later they come back and say, actually, now I'm ready, I'm in the space I need to be in to have that support. And I think that's where, again, as society, we need to learn to listen more, especially organizations who, how many of these parents are going into work every day feeling the way that they do, thinking, what can they do? And that really does break my heart, because I think I call it spinning 50,000 plates. So obviously, when you talk about, say, post-separation abuse, add into that child to parent abuse, add into that trying to work, add into that family court, police, GPs, it piles up. And that obviously
You're right.
eventually, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's a marathon. It's something, again, I say marathon, not a sprint. It's not going to be over and done within a short space of time. This is
Well,
something,
recovery
yeah,
from trauma isn't linear.
yeah, yeah.
And
No,
even if we're on our recovery journey, even at the end of it, and we feel healthier, happier, we feel that we've recovered, that's not to say that one day
mm,
somebody might just feel a certain way, and that's okay too.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
not they've failed, it's not anything, it's just it's not linear. And I think we need to remember that. I'm a big believer and advocate for people, regardless of their situation, having the autonomy to choose the right service that works for them in a way that works for them. So
yeah,
for us as a service, we are informed consent. If professionals refer into us, we accept both professional and self referrals, but professionals refer into us, which happens, and they're like, they literally say on the referral form sometimes, we're about to close this family. They don't particularly want to work with you, but we feel that you'd be really great for them.
mm,
So we've made the referral. We can't accept the referral. It's lovely that that professional feels that
yeah,
we can provide that support. But if that individual doesn't want to access support from us, or they don't align with what we do, who are we to tell them they have to? That's actually really damaging,
yeah. It is. I agree.
especially when you're working with victims of domestic abuse, and whatever that looks like. They already feel that they've got no say over their lives, the control around, you know, lots of different areas of their life have changed. And then to be told, oh, we're trying to support you, but what you're going to do is you're going to have to work with these people, whether you want
Yeah,
to or not, because we think that's what's best for you.
yeah,
And when I'm not sitting here saying that there's no services out there that, you know, people can't access, or whatever, but it needs to be at the right time for that individual.
yeah.
I think that also comes down to like funding, though, Lucy, and we haven't got enough
Oh,
to talk about
yes, yeah.
that. But to
Yeah,
pick up on what you said there about work, if anyone's listening, so we know as an organisation that work is quite heavily impacted for our parents. I know certainly from my own lived experience, I had to give up my job. And so when we ask parents, every year we put out a survey, might focus on a particular area, we'll ask certain questions. And what was coming up time and time again was the impact to work. So 74% of parents were having to leave work or reduce hours.
yeah,
And then what was happening was parents who particularly were then perhaps able to access like support from certain benefits, because the benefit system was seeing them as though they voluntarily left a job, they weren't able to get any money. So that irked me. I'm being very
Yes.
particular with my words, Lucy. I mean, you know me, so I'm doing really well, doing really well.
You're
And so
fabulously.
I was like, well, this is a problem. What can we do? So I asked the DWP, Department for Work and Pensions, what are you doing about this? And they were like, well, nothing. So PEGS in 2021 created a free employer covenant. So any employer in the UK can sign up to, and their managers or HR person who's responsible for HR can get access to free training, documents, and policy support to support their staff or volunteers that might be experiencing CPA. And then what we did was I got asked to go and present at a meeting for the DWP, and some of the people from Universal Credit, I can't remember their titles, but they were quite
Oh
high
yeah,
up, were
yeah,
there. And I
yeah,
raised this and said, look, some of our parents are having to leave and you're penalising them.
yeah.
They, at that meeting publicly and since, have honoured that if anybody who's experiencing CPA may have to leave work because of it, they'll no longer be penalised.
Good,
Um,
amazing.
so we are trying to, like, what can we do? And so for me, it's about what can we do to support employers, because we know statistically, we're still in our infancy in terms of research, but what we know, and by we I mean those in the sector of CPA, experts put it around 1 in 10 parental figures will experience this form of abuse. So if you can count 10 parents that you directly know someone experiencing this behaviour, if you can count 10 colleagues, then perhaps your employer should be signing up to the C.I.C to get more training, upskill, and access certain things to help, because, and it's free.
Just going to say, I mean, you couldn't be doing more if you tried. You're giving it away. And like you
It
say,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer because no one's got any money, have we? Like,
No.
let's be honest, no one's really got any money, or what we do have, we're having to really invest heavily into services. And so I was like, look, I don't. Some things you can just donate, and so that's just my gift, and PEGS' gift really to employers is like, look, just let's see what we can do to work together. We also run every month for free a free information session for professionals. They can come along to the session, meet one of the team. It might be me, it might not, it depends on availability. Have a brew, learn about PEGS, who we support, referral pathways, what programs we've got running, what the expectations are. That's all out there for free. On our blog section, we've created resources for professionals and parents that you can just download. They're free. So we're trying to do as much as we can.
Yeah.
And I refuse to charge any parental figure. So all of our services are free. And just to explain a little bit about how we work. So as standard, anybody in the UK can access 7 daily practitioner-led sessions, including 2 evening sessions, run by trained professionals. My staff, really, they're incredible. We've got a closed monitored peer support group with lots of different resources, information, uplifting stuff. We've got a wellbeing practitioner with wellbeing resources and self-guided stuff that you can access. We've got a free webinar on anxious thoughts and feelings with downloadable audios that people can access. We've got a 6-week program called Epic, Empowering Parents in Crisis. That's what our parents named it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Epic. That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's what they named it. And it was created by those with lived experience, academia background, mental health, all sorts of different fabulous people have inputted. And we created a 6-week program. We've got a 2-part program for women. And that's just because the program was created funding for women, not that we're excluding men.
Yes, yeah, you can't help well, as and when, if the funding comes in.
Yeah. But that's called Bounce Back Step Forward. That was created by a wonderful friend of mine called Emma Roscoe. She's incredible. And it's around improving your self-resilience. There's mindfulness techniques, there's guided meditations that you get out of it, handouts, resources. That's all on there, free. So parents can access all of that. We run a monthly wellbeing session, which focuses on different topics. So I think this month, I think was healthy eating or nutrition. We've done benefits of like looking after yourself, what actually is self-care, and we move through that every month with different topics. So yeah, we try and do as much as we can, and then only for our funded areas, which is not a lot of areas. We provide one-to-one support where we work bespokely on an individual basis with parental figures on a practical and emotional perspective through a series of calls, video calls. Everything we do is online. We provide advocacy at meetings, for example. We really do advocate heavily for our parents. We've got different support options that we can put in place for them. So yeah, that's what we
Oh,
do.
I was going to say it's. I don't think there isn't anything you haven't covered when it comes to support, and it's so. You're right. It is so important, and if this is out there as free resources, the employers covenant, why would you not sign? How many organisations must there be in this country? How many employers are there? Millions probably, and it's so simple just to say. And again, how many days of work are lost? How many people, like you say,
Exactly.
are saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to give up work. I have to focus on, because who doesn't put their children at the centre of everything that they do as a parent?
Exactly.
you
And you
know
know
and
what?
and so that's going to happen, and so, but why should parents who are doing that be penalized and not have that support to see, actually, nothing's going to it's one of my husband's sayings, nothing changes if nothing changes, and you think, well, that's so simple, but it's so true.
True.
It's so
And
true.
also, work might be the only place that that person can access support.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
let's work together to see what we can do. And you know what you said there's absolutely true. Parents love and want their children more than anything. They are their child's biggest advocate, regardless of their child's age. They
Yeah.
really are. None of them come to us and are negative of their child. They're not. They don't want their child labeled as a troublemaker or criminalize them. They don't want any of that. What
No.
they want is to be heard, supported and empowered, and they want their child to have that support too.
Yeah.
It's got to a point for a lot of them that we're like decades in with some of these parents, and I'm like a long time in with them, and it's heartbreaking when you hear, do you know what, you're the first person that's ever said I believe you.
Oh, that was something else I was thinking of as well, is, if we look at that
Yeah.
that stigma around domestic abuse, around post-separation abuse, and and that lack of belief, that lack of, and it's the thing that drives me insane there. Well, allegedly this happened, allegedly it's this, and allegedly it's that, and you think, no,
But
no, but that's that,
again,
like you said before, that's that person's reality. Who are we to judge
exactly.
what somebody else's reality is? If they're living in that day to day, then we're not in a position to judge that, because we're not living it.
Yeah, we're not. And also, when you're asking those things and putting the onus on the person to prove something's happened,
Yeah.
we're again putting the victim at fault.
Yeah, we're blaming them again, saying, but you can't, and for example, if it is coercive control, it's all great at the minute in the news. It's talking about, again,
Yes.
fantastic. But again, coercive control is very, very difficult gathering evidence for things, and especially when I'm talking now, I say the word perpetrator in terms of domestic abuse, but trying to gather evidence on somebody who's very, very cunning, who's very manipulative, who's very charming, who's very this, it's very difficult. And so when it comes to your child, who all you want is the best for them, then, putting that blame and shame again, that's something that really it irks me more than anything, is why are we, and who are we to judge? Because, and I often say this when if I'm talking to organizations, I'll say, but how do you know you're not in an abusive situation? And they sort of look as if they say, well, I'm not. But what's your normal then? If your normal is what is your normal? So if your normal is that your partner talks to you like a piece of crap or whatever it is, or
Yeah.
if that's normal to you, but that's abusive, that's verbal abuse, and it's trying to get people to see that it isn't always as easy to understand as they might believe from the outside, and say, well, I'd never let that happen to me. How do you know it's not? How do
Yeah.
you know it's not happening to you? Yeah.
But I think if you speak to any victim survivor, I
Yeah.
think all of them potentially, I mean, this might be just my assumption, and I can speak because I've got lived experience of intimate partner, so I'm not necessarily talking about my child at this point,
Yeah.
but I never went into my relationship thinking
Yeah.
this is what's going to happen,
Yeah.
because funnily enough, if they had their true mask, not many of us, I would have thought, that's not how this works.
Abuse doesn't start the minute you meet them, the second you meet them. That's
No,
what drives you
it's
around. Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, and you're so right. It becomes, the behaviours become normality because it's like a tap. It's drip, drip, drip,
Yeah.
drip, 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 drip.
Yes.
And what we find, and I'm talking about CPA here, a lot of our parents speak to us, and it's really sad because they're like, well, they're not hitting me anymore. They're just doing this, for
Yeah.
example. And one of our parents said, I don't have to be hit for it to hurt. The word my child uses hurts just as much as a punch. And I think that is so important to remember.
That
The
stays with you. That stays. That stays.
days bruises heal, bones can get fixed. I'm not saying the impact of that doesn't
No.
doesn't impact anyone, because I 100% understand and accept that it does. But for all the victims that I've worked with, I've worked in the DA field now for quite a long time, because I'm very old, Lucy. I feel it. If you ask my 17-year-old or 19-year-old son, whatever, however old he is now, I can't remember, got so many, he'll definitely tell you I'm old. So, but if you, yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? It's like nobody, it becomes your normality.
Yeah.
When it's your child, though, where do you go? Because if it's your partner and you feel strong enough, able enough, and it's right for you, there are choices that you can make where perhaps you would leave that home, leave that person. And where do you go if it's your child, particularly if they're under the age of 18?
Yeah, you can't, because like we said before, it's they are the center of your world. And you know what, you've just made me think now. I did an episode a while ago with Amanda Warburton Wynn, and we were talking about carers. We were
Yes.
talking about the impact with carers, and so whichever way round it would be, whether it was the carer that was abusive or the person being cared for that was abusive. And she said something really interesting. It's just struck me now with what you were talking about. And I think it's very relevant with children as well. Is she said, it's not that they want the relationship to end, they want the abuse to stop.
Which
And
is
that's
what me
so
and her talked
different from
about.
domestic abuse, when actually I want to be out of it. And I'm not saying in all situations, some people choose to stay and that is their choice.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can find a safe way to stay. But for those that choose to leave, they want that relationship to end and they want to be away from it. And that's what post-separation abuse is all about. But actually, when it comes to a relationship with a child, and it just made me think of it then, and I
I
thought it's
was
so
the
true.
same.
Yeah, yeah, they don't want the
It is,
relationship to end, it's the
because
abuse.
they look like, honestly, I'm so proud of all of our parents. We're so privileged, and I'm so proud of them, because they've they've trusted us with something that's so intimate, so personal, about the one person that they love unconditionally and they'll do anything for. And it is, they don't not want their child, they don't want the behavior.
Yeah.
They love their child, they want their child to have the help and support. Quite often parents will come to us because they're like, I don't worry about me, I just want to make sure my child's okay.
Yeah,
And we're
absolutely.
like, okay, we hear you. Please know that you can come back to us should you feel that we can support you further on in your journey. But they don't not want their child. None of this is about not loving their child. Our parents are better researchers than any academic I've ever met.
Yeah.
They can write every blinking parenting program that's ever been created and some. They have gone on every course, they've read everything, they've listened to everything. They are the experts in their family.
Absolutely.
They are already risk assessing and safety planning. They might not use those terms, but they are. They know what works, what doesn't work. They
Yeah,
know what's likely to cause an incident or increase risk.
yeah.
So why, when they speak out, are we telling them,
They're not the
what have
expert.
you done? I mean, one of the most heartbreaking things for me and shocking things for me was around sexual abuse. So I got challenged when I first included sexual abuse on one of our surveys by my team and said, what on earth are you including that for? And I said, I'd like to think that the answer's not, but I also am not that ignorant to think that it isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And sadly, what come out of that at that point was 17% of those that we were supporting were being experiencing inappropriate sexualized behaviors, and 5% were being sexually abused, including rape. Apologies, I should have given a trigger warning before that. And one of the heartbreaking things, and also made me incredibly furious, was when a parent disclosed to me, and then we went to a meeting together, and she found the courage and bravery to tell the social worker her child was not present, and said that her son had tried to rape her. The social worker replied with, but did you entice him?
Oh, wow.
I've And that has stuck with us as a team for forever. I don't think that will ever go from any of us.
No, no,
um
no.
the damage caused was unforgivable, to be
I
completely
mean,
honest. There's
wow.
just no words.
There
And
isn't.
while there isn't, and whilst I accept and understand that talking about sexual abuse, sexual assaults, that is already heavy,
Yeah,
we know that. But when we then add into that it's somebody's parent
yeah,
or parental figure,
yeah.
it's even more harrowing, if that's the right word.
And again, it is bringing that. And do you know what's awful is this is not. So I'd done an episode a while ago with a lady called Sharon Jackson, and she talks about child sexual abuse, and talks about her own experiences and things. And one of the things she talked about was supporting somebody, and again, a social worker saying to a mother, well, why don't you just leave? I mean, these are people that are meant to be in positions, and I'm not saying it's all of them, absolutely, that disclosure, it isn't all social workers. I call it, unfortunately, I believe it's a lottery. If you have, if you have a good one, great. It can be a bit of a lottery.
Oh, we work with incredible social workers. Do you know what? Some of
Yeah,
the most incredible people I've ever met are social workers that go above and beyond to ensure the safety and well-being of all those members that they're working with the household. I
yeah,
cannot sing their praises. And I think that, like, during lockdown and stuff, we sometimes forgot about social workers. They
yeah,
were key workers, they were
yeah.
doing all that incredible work. So I'm really clear, we're not a bash of service or
Oh no,
bashing, like,
no,
we're
no,
not
no.
around
And I
that.
think you're right though. But I think within all realms of work and what people choose to do as an occupation, there are going to be people that don't understand, and there are going to be people, unfortunately, that then come across those
Yeah.
individuals, and then it's down to that training again, it's down to that awareness, it's down to that understanding, and if we don't use the right language, then it is going to damage somebody. It is going
Yeah.
to be damaging for probably that individual is going to blame themselves again and again and again.
And they're probably not going to disclose to anybody ever
No,
again.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you've just gone, sorry, I can't, because now I'm just going to be
And
judged every time I open my mouth.
I
Yeah.
just think with anyone, if anyone trusts you enough to share any of their experience, whatever that is, not even domestic abuse, just in general, your response matters so much at that point,
Yeah.
because it can be the difference between that individual seeking support, help,
Yeah.
building trust, and starting their recovery, and whatever that looks like for them,
Yeah.
to continuing to feel isolated, blame, shame, perhaps guilt, all those other negative feelings, perhaps choosing unhealthy
And then the cycle of
behaviors
abuse.
themselves, and the
Yeah.
cycle just goes round.
Yeah.
So I always think, regardless of the disclosure, you're privileged because somebody has seen something in you to trust you.
Yes.
So your response at that point matters. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything.
No.
It's rather than say something negative,
Yeah, that's
no,
very true.
or just say thank you so much for telling me.
Yeah,
How would you like me to help you with this?
yeah, yeah. What can I do to
What can
support
I
you?
do?
And that's something else that, again, I get asked by organisations, well, what can the individual do to support themselves? And I always come back with the same thing. Okay, there are things somebody may be able to do. However, what are you doing as an organisation to support that individual? Stop putting the onus on them again, saying, well, what can they do to spot the signs? We've just said it before, you don't walk into a relationship, and you certainly don't have your children and think that anything's going to be abusive. It just isn't something that crosses your mind. But the awful thing is that until organisations understand this, and until people who are working with other people, it's going to keep perpetuating that problem, that person is going to think that they are the issue, and that's the kind of thing that drives me absolutely up the wall.
No, definitely. But also think about the children in that home. So it might be siblings, they're impacted. That whole household's experiencing trauma. Whatever way you try to look at this, those
Yeah,
behaviours are recurring. It's
yeah,
trauma. And I include the child that's displaying those behaviours at that point as well. I think it's really important. But also how we respond to child to parent abuse is really crucial in the messaging we're sending, particularly young people.
yeah,
So we had a discussion before we come on, didn't we? And I hear this time and time again. It's because of they've experienced whatever that might look like. It's because they've got ADHD or the ASD. It's because that's all we hear time and time again. But what message are we actually sending that individual?
yeah, yeah,
We hear time again from our parents, that schools sometimes are saying they're masking. It's like a bottle of pop. Now, I understand how all of that works in terms of neurodiversity, but if you hear any of my team or me particularly speak, we stay away from it because we talk about the behaviour, because that's the behaviour that the parents are talking about. But if you just think, oh, I'm really sorry your son did that to you,
yeah.
but he had a tough day at school, he was masking and you're his safe place. Could you imagine saying, I'm really sorry your husband did that to you, he had a really tough day today at work and he was just masking?
Yeah. I mean, it beggars belief. It absolutely beggars belief that this would be acceptable things to say to somebody. And it's interesting because when you were saying before about what's important in terms of how we support, and I'd done an episode with a lady called Sari Taylor, and she's a trained psychotherapist. She's trained in lots of different areas of it. And she's one of my oldest friends, and we talk about how would she, if she was in the situation again, and she'd been in the situation in the past, And how would she then, as in terms of abuse, how would she then support that individual? And she said, I think now, and she was talking about taking ego out of it, because a lot of the times I think friends and family, even if they see it from the outside, you know, if a friend sees it and thinks that the child is displaying that behavior, or if they see the, in terms of an intimate relationship, see that behavior, it's very difficult. We always kind of forget about the friends, don't we, in some ways, because actually they don't know how to help because they can see it maybe from the outside. And she was saying, I would listen, I would take ego out of it and what I think I know about the situation and what I think I believe to be true. And actually, I would listen and say, look, I just get the feeling that things are difficult. And if you need me, I'm here. And I thought that if we all did a bit more of that,
Definitely.
you know, your referrals might not be through the roof if we all did a bit more of that.
No, but it's true. I mean, it's interesting you picked up on families and friends because, like, for me, I think it's the hardest thing sometimes is to watch someone you love and care about
Yeah.
live through domestic abuse, whatever that looks like for them. And but again, your response matters, you know. From a child's parent abuse perspective, our parents, they don't want you to demonize their child. They don't want you to talk negatively of their child, you know. And if they trust you enough and they're talking in whatever language they're talking in, that's their child. So from a parent's perspective, certainly from those that we support, they're like, that's my prerogative, but I'm not going to let someone else do that. And actually,
They'll
I'm
defend,
venting.
they'll defend. Exactly. So you've got to be
And,
so careful,
you
haven't you,
know,
now, as
so
a
just
friend?
asking, you know, we're not asking, well, we have the conversation we're having here at the moment, we're saying the same thing. We're not asking a lot. We're saying, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
How can I help you?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is it you need right now?
Yeah. It's so simple, isn't it? It's so simple. It doesn't cost
So
you.
obviously, safeguarding. So, like, if anyone is really concerned about the safety and well-being, you know, do call the police, do speak to your local safeguarding boards, or local authority safeguarding, children's services, and things like that. 100%. But ultimately, just ask
Yes. Yeah.
because. And that's why PEGS is run the way we run, because I refuse to be part of something that I don't agree with. And I think, how can I run a service without asking those that I want to support what they need? Because I know what I might have needed back in my time. I know what I might have felt like, etc. But that's not everyone's experience, and
No.
it's not about me. And so for me, always everything. We don't run anything. We literally have a poll in our peer support group, Lucy, over what do you think about this? So, for example, one of our parents said they missed going to Zumba. That's what they missed. They couldn't go to Zumba. They couldn't leave the house. So um, I put some of my team on a Zumba course to learn to be Zumba instructors.
Brilliant.
And so we now bring movement to music to them
Oh, wow. You know what? I
because
love that.
they were like, that's what I really miss. I really miss being able to do that.
Yeah.
So
But you're
let
right.
it
You know
doesn't have
what?
to be, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be loads. Like us running a drop-in essentially is practitioner-led sessions. It's run by the team, but we run them Monday to Friday, different times, morning, lunch times. We've got 2 evening sessions, and sometimes it's heavy. But
Yeah.
every single time we leave those calls, we leave on a positive.
Yeah.
Last night they were all laughing and joking, and one of the practitioners said today they were laughing and joking last night. Sometimes it's heavy,
Yeah.
but what we've got is a community of incredible people, and we are so privileged. And I'm sure I talk about being privileged all the time. People think she's nuts, and I'm like, yeah, I am. I don't care, because
Yeah.
actually I am privileged. No, because I
Yeah.
am, and I think I'm in a place. I'm so fortunate, as are my team, and like my team are incredible.
Yeah.
They've got so much experience between them in lots of different areas. They know far more than me in most things. I'm okay with that, and it's okay. I got into this to make change in some way, whatever that looked like.
Yeah.
But I can't and I don't want to do it alone. We need collaboration and we need to start working together. Our sector can be quite toxic as a
Yes.
domestic sector. People get a bit twitchy when I start talking about the
I,
toxic
I don't.
behaviour.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Um, but it can be. And
Yeah.
I'm like, hang on, we're all after the same goal here. You know, let's look at what we can do to work together. And it's absolutely okay. Change can start with any one of us at any one time. It just takes one person.
Yeah, it does. God, you sound. I don't even know what else to say because that's just perfection. And you are right. It is. you know, the experience is what makes them the experts. And it's sad, it's awful because no one wants that experience. You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, but it is the experience that makes them the experts. And like you say, it takes that one person just to make a difference. And you're making a
Definitely.
difference to so many lives. And I know you're very humble about it, but I'm not too proud to say how much you do and how much I think of what you do. I think it's incredible because I think, I always look at things from the perspective of, look at, say, 10 years ago, would anybody been having a conversation about child to parent abuse? No,
No,
absolutely not. It wouldn't be a conversation that's
no.
on the table. It
So
wouldn't. It'd just be, sorry, that's taboo. Don't
it
even know what
doesn't
that means.
happen. Yeah. And I do, because I don't ever see this as a me thing. I see it as a team thing, like from my board, and I look at it as a jigsaw. All of us in PEGS, whatever capacity you're part of us, we're all part of that bigger jigsaw. Like we
Yeah.
all have our place and we all work and we all ultimately are after the same thing. So that's why I talk about it in that way. But like we're 5 next month, and so far I never ever, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would never have thought, like we've supported in excess of 8,500 parents or caregivers. We've upskilled over 2,000 professionals. We consulted with the Home Office to get child to parent abuse recognised within the domestic abuse statutory guidance. We've become trusted partners of NHS safeguarding. We've done international work with New Zealand and with America. There's so much stuff, that media stuff with EastEnders, there's something else later in this year.
I
Nearly
was
slipped off
just
my
going to
board.
say, I didn't
Not
want to say
allowed.
it. I wanted to leave it to you to say, but
Yeah,
that
no,
just
so we
shows you,
really
doesn't it?
we were really privileged. EastEnders to consult with them on a storyline on child to parent abuse, and it was absolutely yeah, we were really lucky. We went, yeah, it was yeah, they did a really good job of portraying it in the reality for so many. And there's more to come. We've run on the awareness day. We created an awareness day on October the 14th, and we run conferences this year. Hopefully, we're having an in-person one. Lucy's going to come as well, which is nice.
Yay.
But we're going to have an in-person one. Last year we had an international one that with speakers from across the globe. We've done so much as a team, and I'm so proud of them, and I'm so proud to be part of something. I've also learned loads of lessons, and I've also made loads of mistakes.
No, you know what they always say that, don't they? It's what you learn from what you do. And I keep coming back to, every time I think of PEGS, it's like when you started out, in my head I'm thinking, as an organization, as a charity, it's like the square peg in the round hole, isn't it? And it's like but actually you're changing that hole now. You're changing it for the better, and you're changing it because it needs to be changed. We can't keep doing, making this the same problems and issues for people. We need to be actually helping them. And the more that the irony of it is, the more we talk about things, the more we normalize it, the more we say it's okay to talk about it. You don't have to be ashamed. And the reason I set this up, and the reason I called it Dip In and Out with Lucy, is just dip in and out when you want. I'm not saying you have to listen to the whole thing or watch the whole thing. It's for you, that a time that suits you, and it's giving that power and control back to those individuals that need it.
Exactly.
And it's so
No, definitely. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing 5 years ago. I just thought, oh, let's do something. And now look at me, and look at PEGS. And I think that
exactly.
is what I like to give to other people, and get, because quite often I'll meet different people on different journeys from different things. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, why not?
Why
Because
not?
you see, the most powerful story you ever tell yourself is the words that you speak to yourself. And so
Yes.
you keep telling yourself, I can't, I can't, I can't. Subconsciously,
Yeah.
you won't,
Yeah.
because that's your limit. You're telling. So why can't you? Who are you not to do?
No. Exactly. Why is anybody else in a better position to do it than you? Yeah, exactly. And it just, what PEGS has achieved is absolutely huge. I normally don't sort of, to try and sum things up. I normally don't go, what, because I get asked this question sometimes, like, what would be your like top tips, or what would you be this, what would be that? And I think everything you do is a top tip, to be perfectly honest. But if
Oh,
you
if you want a list of my failures and my mess ups and stuff, drop me an email. Like, I'm quite happy to share.
it
No problem.
shapes us. It shapes us. Tragedy to triumph. That's what it's all
Oh,
about.
I love that. I'm gonna get that
Tragedy
up rather than the pair of boobs that I'm currently showing you as I'm drinking.
I've got one that says home with pretty little flowers. I
Oh,
love it.
oh, well, I
Why
was
not?
going to say something inappropriate, but I'll tell you why I've got this cup after all. Yeah.
Yeah, when we stop, you can tell me in a minute. But oh no, so if somebody is listening, or somebody is thinking, actually, this does 100% resonate with me. I'm a bit scared. Don't really want to admit it to myself. What would you sort of, I mean, I always say, like, go with your gut. That was what would I would be to say to somebody if you are worried, but what would be your sort of piece of advice.
It's okay. You're not alone.
Yeah.
It'll be all right.
Yeah.
And if PEGS is right for you, we'll get in the tunnel with you. I just don't know how long your tunnel's going to be, but you won't be in that alone. So have a look on our website at pegsupport.com or .co.uk. Have a look on our social media, PEG Support again. See if we're right for you. You're more than welcome to join our community. There is a community of incredible people there, and you will be welcomed, supported in the way that we would like to be able to support you, but at a time that's right for you. And if we're not right for you now, that's okay too. We'll be there for when you're ready.
Oh my God, I love that. Well, I don't know what else to say other than to say thank you, because when I say I know how busy you are and I know how long we've been trying to get this together to do it, I'm exceedingly grateful to you for giving up your time this morning to do this. And yeah.
Always, Lucy, massive champion. So we need to get more people coming to speak to you now. That's what we need to do.
Keep them coming, keep them coming. Oh, thank you, Michelle, so much. Thank you for everything.
Oh, thanks, Lucy.
Where